Okay, so I'm going to make you the host again, and it should be good.
Okay, great. So we're just waiting on Monica to rejoin, and then we'll get started.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye.
In the meantime, Olivia, you're all set, correct? Okay, great.
I'll just share my screen already. Can you hear me well?
Yep. I think we should wait though. I mean, yeah, go ahead and share. That's okay.
Okay.
For Monica to join. We have a couple minutes. It's really strange. I don't know why she's having difficulty.
I'm going to send an email to Monica because if she joined through the chat, then there's no option again.
Okay. Do you want me to email you the link, Iñaki?
No, I have it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Well, if I had the email of Monica Rivera, which it seems I don't.
Let's see. I might be copied on the email that Margarita sent to all of the critics.
Yeah, I have found that.
Okay. So you have it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. There she is.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you.
Perfect. In case this occurs, I'm just going to paste the schedule into the chat. Should be in there now. And lastly, I'm going to paste the concept board into the chat. Okay. Perfect. I think we're all set. Olivia, why don't you take it away?
Hear me?
Sure can,
Double checking.
but speak up.
Yeah, and today I will be proposing a collective housing project entitled The Collective Curtain. This aggregation exercise was preceded by 3 housing studies, starting with the horizontal home, the vertical home, and then the sectional home. I was specifically interested in the expression of modularity, which is an inquiry I carried through to the aggregation. The initial inspiration for this project came from the Sila Dam by MVRDV. It's a project I've kept in mind while resolving the block because it proposes compelling ideas of community, form, and porosity. Of a 60-unit housing development designed for a co-working community, and I will elaborate on this programmatic element later on. The grain of the residential New Orleans block produces a grid that naturally dissects the plot at different scales. So even the negative space resulting from the homes maintains these lattice characteristics. first one demonstrates the distribution of blocks, green tones being open to sky and blue enclosed. In the second one, the grid lines introduce scale and start to determine the enclosure. Of New Orleans was a priority. So a lot of the initial ideas for connecting the project to its unique context involved reimagining or reinventing the porch and shutter conditions. So these taken from homes in New Orleans. Context, the block organization is largely connected to an analysis of the surrounding blocks and their composition. The primary circulation of the project occurs between the north to south bars, and at a closer scale is when the west to east porosity becomes clear. And again, this hierarchy of movement through directionality emerges from the existing urban grain. The ground floor is, the enclosed ground floor is all flexible office space, accessible to the residents as well as the public. And this extensive availability and accessibility of workspaces at different scales allows the offices to be removed from the units, promoting not only collaboration, but also a balance between work and living. So the project really serves a community looking to increase productivity and teamwork through collective workspaces, especially in the current climate when the work environment is constantly being reinvented. The problem of maximizing working convenience without compromising or interfering with home life demands attention. So the exterior spaces balance the collective and public program, which in each bar switch at the stair core. So the meandering paths are open to the larger neighborhood and attempt to relieve the rigidity of the block, while the areas for the residents resume the grid order and create collective gardens. The typical plan uses the loaded corridor system, so each unit is derived from the other, and this systematic approach allows for easily differentiated floors where all sizes of units are interchanged and integrated with each other. 4 floors in total, the top 3 of which contain the units, and the third floor contains collective terraces, which vary depending on the building. So looking from west to east, the middle 3 buildings include an art space, yoga space, and performance space, respectively. And the remaining terraces act as versatile patio programs. And these are elevated to create gathering spaces removed from the publicity and working environment of the ground floor, again, speaking to a sort of work-life balance. There are 60 total units with 3 typologies, going from a 1-bed, 1-bath to a 3-bed, 2-bath. Looking from left to right, the floor plan is taken from the most west building to show how the core and quarter relate to the unit and the facade details. So I have 22 small units, 21 medium units, and large units. Of the most west building, it demonstrates how irregularity is achieved through the modularity. The west facade is the balcony side of the units, which face the street. And then it's mirrored along the stair core to show the corresponding windows and entrances on the east facade, which faces the ground floor bars. So the entrances are recessed slightly, again, trying to express as much variation as possible in the arrangement of the units. The facade is completely made up of operable shades, presenting a dynamic appearance no matter where the viewer is. And the residents' ownership of the facade connects the project on a more intimate level, where the scale and individuality of the unit becomes clear from the street, and therefore is more integrated into the residential context. The variety is expressed in this axon. And this axon starts to highlight the different scales of activity from the offices on the ground floor to collective terraces on the 3rd and units and balconies in between. In the west to east direction emphasizes the openness of the project. So even if the facade is completely shut, the project maintains a permeability that invites the neighborhood. This perspective is taken from the ground floor, looking at those glass offices. This is from one building to another, looking at the collective terrace, in this case, the art studio. And finally, in the corridor, looking at the recessed entrance to the unit on the left. And let me quickly share an animation that compares the closed condition to the open condition of the facade, expressing the individuality and ownership of those units from the ground. Go ahead and share the concept board now.
Sorry.
Can you show us, Olivia, a little bit how the units are inside?
To a typical floor plan. And 4 units, the 4 stair core. So I kind of understand the issue of, just taking into account the experience of like walking past someone else's window. So that's why the bars are narrow and the stair cores appear after every 3 to 4 units.
One technical question, are we following the Miro board or the concept board that you're sharing, or should we be in concept board? Or concept board?
That's for you, but I can navigate to whatever drawing.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I would also like to see a little bit more of the units and those, the images you have of the full unit. I'm seeing them here. Yes. And can you explain also a little bit about the ground floor? You mentioned there were offices and shared workspaces. Can you explain a bit how those, how you envision those working? Are they shared? Do you sign up? Is it like a, are they all belonging to the whole block community, or they belong to each building? It's just to understand the framework of ownership a little more.
Second. Sorry. Oh yeah. So all the enclosed spaces are office spaces, and I did imagine a sort of balance between like resident ownership as well as like availability for reservation from the larger community, and from the bar, but then once you navigate under the bar itself, there's different scales of offices. So a private conference room versus a bigger meeting area and workspaces.
So I think it's a wonderful project. I have to say it's beautifully drawn, very clear in your presentation. So it's wonderful to see the depth of the detail that you're working with, and all the complexity. I think. Do you have anywhere? I'm interested in seeing how they're interacting with existing buildings. If there's also an idea there on the ground floor. They're now rendered blank. Are those residential on the ground floor in the existing?
Are you referring to? Yes. So this, the one in the northwest corner is a coffee shop. In the northeast corner is a restaurant, and the one to the south is a residential lot. in the arrangements of the units and deciding what facade should have the entrances and what facade should include the balconies. I was thinking about like what you would want to see on your balcony, and therefore no balcony faces a spot or looks into someone's backyard.
I think this idea that you're working of this porosity, you're working with this cellular condition on the ground floor that you can go. So I can imagine the flow of air and movement, which I think is really interesting. And I wonder if on the floor plans with this linear arrangement, if those like really great spaces that you have at the ends that are collective, the ones with the uses in pink. And also the internal organization of the unit, if it could carry that idea of the cellularity, because one thing that comes to mind, I think the most successful ones are the ones that are right next to the stairs, right? The spaces that where you're sort of like everyone's, well, in this case, half of the building, right? Because you need 2 means of entry, but that they're shared with the.
Olivia, can you show in the concept board yeah, because Monica, you're talking about this, no?
Yes, I'm talking about exactly these spaces here. And I find that when I look at the units, and I know you were working from inside out, and I would be more interested in seeing a little more how that process was to understand how you got to the development of the particular unit. Because I see in the unit, there's sort of a linear arrangement rather than a room arrangement that maybe would have matched, taking that concept of the cellular further. And I wonder if that could lead maybe to rooms that could be detached and attached to take into account growth and change in structures and family structures. Because right now the unit seems a bit, it's more conventional compared to what you're doing in the ground floor. So yes, I'm interested in seeing how or hearing about how you developed the unit, or if there were regulations that limited you in some way in how to arrange the rooms and the kitchens and so on, the living space.
Modularity and having kind of a system of dimensions going from a small unit to the larger unit. And working like the recessed entrance that occurs more than once in the larger plans, and then way for the smaller ones, and then that the dimension of the next to the recessed entrance determines whether or not they get a balcony. So only the large and small units have that extra dimension. And also working with relatively narrow bars to maximize these almost.
Yeah, Olivia. Yeah, I think I agree with Monica. I think that the solution is super elegant. It's kind of, oh, why didn't I think about this? Because it's kind of so clear that once you see that, there's no question. No, you just put this order of the bars, and that fits perfectly well. And if you go to the ground floor, it fits really well. And I really appreciate that you have thought about the space in between the buildings, with sometimes or most of the time maintaining the same system, well aligned, no, with the what happens inside with what happens outside. I think that's really like smart. And sometimes you just change, no, and pervert the system, which is perfectly fine, no. That's exactly the beauty of the system, no. So and seeing this is like, sure, that's exactly what needs to happen in this ground floor, no. It has all the permeability, the ability for people to move across, and change paths and find their way. I think it's absolutely brilliant the way that you have organized this ground floor with the narrow bars. And then I think that there are some issues here that maybe you may consider a little bit more, like actually giving some kind of lobby to the entrance, and yeah, not having people opening the umbrella inside the elevator because the rain is going to hit them immediately the doors are open. So I think you can, but that's very easy to solve, no? I think when you go to the upper floor is when the question of Monica is really pertinent. The way that you have designed the let's see if this clears. Yes. So the way that you have designed the ground floor seems like it would be very conducive to design the upper floor again, no? I'm thinking that the enclosed bubbles can be rooms, can be bathrooms, and that you can have empty spaces. In some cases, they don't arrive to the internal facade, but they actually the perpendicular organization, same that you have done in the ground floor, seems like it would be working better, especially because I think you have some issues of dimensions in general. My sense is that you have problems of dimensions in the elevators, for instance, the space that is in front of the elevators, the space that is in front of the stairs, ways of moving, and even in the narrowness of the bar, no? That is challenging. I appreciate that you have tried to make the slimmest possible, but it's a little bit challenging. If you go to the typologies, I think you can perfectly readjust the typologies inside the bars to work in the perpendicular direction again, no? In organizing especially the some kind of wet bubbles that are organized in going in favor of your system, no? As opposed to divide very narrow, the very narrow in very, very, very narrow fringes, no? That is quite challenging. So all the spaces are very, very, very too tight, I would say, no? And generates like a little bit of strange moments, no? Like this one. And maybe with this idea of moving in and out from this, you may have spaces in which actually the corridor can have more thickness at some points and generate more spatial variations, no? Like you have started here in this, but could be reinforced. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yes, because that corridor is sort of analog to the spaces between the bars on the ground floor. So one decision, I mean, you've decided to put that activity on the ends, but I don't see a system of going through them because at some cases, like for example, let's see, this one, I'm on the food plants now, the bar. For this building, for example, to go into this space, right? You have to pass, I think, in front of only 2 units, right? Is that right? And then in some cases, this is a terminal one, right? And in some others, there's only one stair. So this is fully activated, but then to get to the last unit, you pass in front of the others. So I think especially with and I don't know how to erase this, sorry. But especially with the precedent of the Silodam, where that walkway is really extended and there's, double heights and life in that walkway. I think there was an opportunity to do something similar, like the wonderful green spaces that you have in between the bars on the ground floor. And then maybe that would be an opportunity to, as Iñaki's saying, pointing out, arranging some of those moments in a little bit more generous way, or start to think of the unit or maybe the kitchen, and sort of going into the micro scale of the social space of the unit itself. So going from that family or household unit to half of the block that is divided by the stairs, to the full block, and then to the rest of the floors. That's the only thing that I struggle with a little bit. The amount of hallway that it's being sort of generated in the units. Yes, but other than that, I think it's and dimensions-wise, it's a really accomplished project, and I congratulate you.
Olivia, what was the order of decision, the sequence of your decisions? What came first? What came second? Was the units after the bars after the units? What was your sequence?
So the ground floor and the modularity and the grid system definitely came first, but it was my units were largely determined by my sectional home plans. I can hand to those, and kind of just the the modularity of those and the elongated system. But it transformed a lot for sure, and the dimensions was the hardest part, especially in creating a system that was easily repeatable at many different scales of units. So, yeah.
This is very interesting because I think there's a moment in which we all have to learn to listen to the project and to let the project drive instead of you driving. No, once the project is strong enough, you just ask the project, what do you want to be? No, and I think once you have the bars and you have the ground floor, asking the project might have helped you to go, no? Because even when you are doing this interpretation here, or this building in this, keep the sectional home.
Oh, sorry.
Keep the sectional house.
Uh-huh.
Because even if you are now saying, okay, what can I learn from what I did? And you say, okay, now in my bar, I don't have a central corridor. I actually have the corridor in one of the sides, no? And you still say, okay, but I'm going to still work with the same logic. No? Bringing these pieces, no? But attached there. And let's say this is the bedroom. This is the living room that is in between. Those, some are closed. This is the bathroom. This is another bedroom. So you still keep the idea of having these enclosed bubbles with much more transparent ones, no?
Yeah.
That are hanging from there, and that are again very similar to the first floor or ground floor mindset that you have, no? That keeping the transversal permeability of your project, no? In which you can actually always trespass like that, no? But that, I think that would be this kind of let the project take me now, instead of me trying to impose a conventional housing unit apartment that doesn't fit because it's too narrow. And if you wanted to put a conventional ground floor, it would have been a failure, no? So I think that would be the next step, I believe.
Yeah, thank you.
Just one final thing, maybe like looking at the lone units that you have, maybe part of the challenge is that you're placing the 3 bedrooms in one end. But if you were to shift one of them to the other end and work with this idea of the breatheway, right, in between, then I think that would have made the social space of the house sort of be more, just going sort of through, as Iñaki's pointing out, and as I see a little bit on your ground floor, that would allow that space of the I don't know if you can see, I'm drawing on somewhere on the plans. So on the full plans. But anyway, I think there's a difficulty with the location of the bedrooms in relation to the social space of the house, and maybe that setback space could have grown to be more of a that setback space, which is now a little bit timid, and I do like this space, but if I know there's a difficulty always of getting the bedroom with light, but I think it would have helped you to maybe separate like bedroom, and then formalize this conceptually as part of the walkway. Maybe that would have tied it in with your ground floor. It's just a small move, but yes, it's what I'm seeing with and then organizing the stairs and the walkway.
Looks like we have to move to next, no?
Can I make one last comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you continue with the same system and same idea at all scales, and you apply that to the facade and to the internal facade, and then you work with a narrow. Can you go to the typologies 1 second? Yeah. Very briefly. Sorry, Margarita.
No worries.
So you have here a structure that is made of very narrow. These very narrow fringes that are the how do you call it? The shutters, no?
Yeah.
Okay. So instead of now opening like strange windows that are in the opposite direction, I wonder if you could have been working with the same rhythm, opening by vertical fringes, as opposed to have a kind of facade that is much more longitudinal openings and longitudinal walls. Just believing and seeing how your proposal can how far can you go with the same system?
Yeah.
In inside facades, shutters, etc.
Yeah.
Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you.
We're rubbing up against the time, and we'll switch to
just one thing quickly. Carrie, you're the host, so you cannot leave. You need to leave the host someone else.
correct, which I will do.
Otherwise, we'll kill the room. And I think that the timekeeper, who is the timekeeper here?
I am.
Olivia. So you're going to be the host. You can hand out the host to Olivia, and Olivia, you might have to make co-host everyone that needs to share at the time. So opening the chat or the participants window, and then put your cursor on the camera. It will show you options of making co-host.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. So thank you, Iñaki.
Thank
and
you so
Monica.
much, Olivia.
Yeah.
So we move to Kaylan, I guess. And then timekeeper is up. Meanwhile, I'm going to see if I see David Thompson lost on the cyberspace space.
Okay, can I start or shall I wait a second?
Yes, all yours.
Okay. Hi, I'm a first year grad in the Collective Housing Studio, and I'm going to walk through some of the designs that influence the intentional community that I'm entitling Synergy. So first I'll go through the horizontal, the vertical, and the sectional home. In the horizontal home, it was designed for a family of five based on a spectrum of privacy and publicity through sun exposure and program. This is why you'll see that the brightest spaces in the home are the courtyard, and the light from that space transcends to the more semi-public spaces like the kitchen and the living room, and then finally into the bedrooms that are more private. This design also focuses on creating porosity through balcony space that I expand upon in the aggregation. And then the vertical home, I explored how to create personal space and a small structure for college students. And by using the stair core to connect the spaces, I was able to create a more private space for the students on the balcony. And this really taught me how to begin to create more private spaces in a collective system like this. And finally, the sectional home, I explored another relationship of a family setting in a space that featured overlapping views. It featured a number of cascading viewpoints by using half floor levels. And this instance can be seen first between the living room and the kitchen, and then again into the next floor from the kids level into the kitchen, and also from the terrace. And then finally on the top floor, where you can view both terraces from the pool. And this can be seen better in the section where there's a number of cascading viewpoints in the exterior and interior space of the sectional home. And for the intentional community, I modified versions of all of these programs within. And here's the outcome of that. So site observations. The main thing that I tried to focus on when looking at the site was just the linear nature of the shotgun itself and how it related to the grain, and how I could take that into account with the aggregation. And the idea for the community synergy is to create a new relationship with water, whether that be with collection systems, repurposing and purification systems. And one of the inspirations also behind the aggregation was the Casa Rastiki. And the main thing that I pulled from this project was balcony space and continuous balcony, and trying to create space within the balcony aside from just egress. So how it works synergy. This is the ground floor level, and it features a series of arrows that point spaces that can only be entered from inside of the community versus spaces that are more free flowing, and spaces that are just majorly public. And the spaces on the ground floor, I tried to incorporate spaces that do use a lot of water and could use water more responsibly, like the pottery studio and the floral shop, and have the community kind of host these spaces and support through their recollection system to support the community and pour back into the community. Here's a pre versus proposed diagram for vegetation and structure. And then I have a water collection system diagram that shows systems that are supported by and support the water recollection system at different levels. So at the subterranean level, you have 2 water tanks that hold in all of the water for recollection and purification. And then at the ground level, there are a series of permeable gravel ponds under extended open air terraces that collect the rainwater, as well as these stormwater ponds that collect on some of the entrances to the site, as well as the pool that supports and is supported by the recollection system. And then in the mid-level, we have 4 pools that are featured in the sectional home modification that are, again, supported and support the recollection system. And the roof level, which features a series of catchment systems that would drain down into these tanks. Here's the second level of the project above the ground level. And here you can really begin to see the relationship of the terrace and the balcony to the community, and as well as the city. This plan features mostly the horizontal home modification as well as the sectional home. And you'll see the sectional homes only in the corners of the project, because unlike the other projects, they do feature half floors. So while there'll be 4 levels of the other floors, there'll only be 2 full-size sectional modification homes at the corner. And then this level is where you begin to see the extension of the open air terraces that, as you go up between the floors, elevate to create and personify the concept of cascading views. Here's the third floor, but second typical floor. And this is where you'll see mostly the studio spaces as well as the small duplex spaces that occupy both the 3rd and 4th floor. And then you'll see the progression of the sectional home as well as the next progression of the extended open air terrace. And here are these together, and you can just begin to see the growth of the sectional home as well as the different relationships between the city and interior through balcony space and just terrace and courtyard space. Here's my first section that you begin to see the relationship between these open air terraces as well as the relationship between horizontal home modification and studio spaces and how that relates to the city as well as to the interior. And then the second section here, you get a lot better view of the cascading views of the terraces as well as the cascade of the stair modification and how that also relates to the city and both to the community. And you can begin to see the water collection systems and how they all connect and how they support this community. So typologies, there are 64 units. The first is extra small, which is a studio space, features a bathroom and a balcony. The small, which is the small duplex, which features 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a 2-story balcony space. The medium, which is the flat and features 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, an outdoor courtyard and a balcony. And finally, the large duplex that features 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, a series of outdoor terraces, and a pool. So experience, this first perspective shows the experience from the lowest extended terrace, and you can see the elevation and kind of the experience of that space, and also these tips for the permeable gravel and the collection system. The second view is from across the street and shows the main entrance to the community as well as a local grocery shop and outdoor seating area for public and collective use, And then finally, the last perspective shows an alternative entrance by French Truck and that relationship of that public space and going into the private community. And that is synergy. Thank you.
Sorry, I need a minute to look through the plans.
Yeah. And I can go back to any image just whenever.
Kyla, can you explain how the vertical communications work? Because they are like very long spines, no? With a stair that goes like in diagonal in the space.
Yeah. Let me go to this section. Yeah, it's a series of a 15-5 stair. The location that you enter to the different corridors do vary just because it is staggered, but the intention is to create spaces that can relate to the city, and as well as having this space that speaks out at different moments. So the real intention is just to personify the cascading effects from the original sectional plan in the sectional home.
Can you show in a plan like a moment where you go in from the stair to one of the floors on a unit?
Yeah, I guess here would be a good example. This would be like the first progression of the stair. So you'd enter here. Well, this would be better because it's two. You would enter through these, and then it would progress more, and you would enter out onto the balcony that in that space that is created by having that bigger plant underneath, and it would just progress as you go upward.
So in some cases, you arrive to a landing that has the two doors, and in some cases, you arrive to a landing that has a corridor that is connecting, like in this case. I'm not sure if we're looking at the same one. Let's see. So I'm seeing this very little in the shared screen, but if you, I'm not sure if I'm looking at the same plan.
Okay.
One option is to go to, maybe, I don't know if it's too late, but concept board and, and
that
then
would be
approach,
great.
no?
Yeah.
Because then also everyone can, so can someone post the link of the concept board on the chat, please, Olivia? Thank you.
I have it open.
And so,
yes.
and so you have it open and can wander on your own. I think that facilitate.
And can you see my cursor? And
yeah.
So I can see others now. Okay. Yeah, so sometimes you come in here and you have the access to the terrace, and that's when you have a corridor, and the other instances it's a closed landing, right? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Is that how the system works?
Yeah, the sectional home corners feature their own stair core that is not staggered. Only the units, these two units, and then the smaller on the subsequent level.
And the
So,
space that is gray
relate to this main stair core.
Okay. And the gray spaces are the outdoor spaces, yes. Right? The terraces.
Correct.
So, Kaylan, you have reused somehow the sectional house for the corners, no?
Yes.
But not for the rest, no? The rest of the typologies have some relation with the horizontal house, or really you just went?
Oh yeah, they do have. It's just like more of an extension, but they do base off of the horizontal home, and then the next floor with the vertical home, and kind of modify with the small duplex, adding on to the idea of the vertical home.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think this is an incredibly sophisticated project in the way you're weaving in and out, and it's taken me a while to just understand the system, but maybe and understand if there's a relationship between the layered stairs and coming into these terraces. But if I'm understanding correctly, the terraces are accessed, the privates that are related to the units are accessed from the unit, correct? And then the communal one is access through the spine. And how many, I see that sometimes in this case, like that is one unit that is having its own, like two terraces, correct?
Correct.
And then this is a small unit that is connected to the other unit through the terrace, correct? Is that right?
Yes, and this one goes multi-levels, yeah.
Okay, and is that happening everywhere, or do you have a rule? I'm just really curious to see how, it's amazing how you're handling all this complexity. And I'm wondering, what are the subsystems? Like if one system is the spine stair that layers down, is there another system for the terraces that you probably explained? But so I apologize if you did, but.
Yeah, so every unit definitely does have its own terrace. For the sectionals, the rule was the corners, mainly to prioritize the fact that the next level has a pool, and also that it features the half level stair system that the other units don't. So that was the first rule, and they have their own staircase and terrace. The second rule was to connect the horizontal home modifications through the spine and have the staggered stair that would continue to be accessed by the smaller units by using the extra space from the plan below. And that big balcony is shared while having the private spaces facing the city, and also connecting to the outdoor terraces at the respective moments. So it kind of is a lot.
And these white spaces here are the communal.
Yeah, communal balcony spaces.
Okay. I think I got you. Let's see what the other plans.
So, Kaylan, this is a completely unfair question, so just bear with me. But what would happen if the sectional home would be taking more presence as a system for the entire? Do you think it has any chance or not?
I think it would have a chance. It would be a complicated chance, but I think that it definitely could be incorporated and personified more. And it was one of the systems that I did try to personify more, that is focused a lot on views and interconnectivity. So I would say yes, it could.
I'm curious because there's my tendency is to reduce some, to edit a little bit, and here you have, as Monica was saying, so much complexity that it's hard to get it. Mm-hmm. But you have one thing that is kind of very, very powerful, no? With these spines that you are organizing, not only the buildings and the vertical circulation, but also the public space, no? Mm-hmm. And that have an enormous prominence. There are like two kinds, one that narrows and the others that arrive to a wider thing. And yeah. I'm not sure why, or if it would be good like having a kind of consistent presence of these cuttings that immediately creates not only the organization of the buildings itself, but also the organization of the outdoor, no? Mm-hmm. So quite really interesting that I'm not sure how legible it is when you make one thicker and the other thinner and so on. And when you see the section of the stair, it looks like really like interesting spines, no? To imagine mm-hmm. that going down that stair and having all this space in front of you, no? Is quite a spatial experience, no? And then I was wondering if this house could be something that, I don't know, could be anchored by these pieces more clearly. I suppose I mean I totally understand the idea of variety and diversity, but in a way each of your three previous models are a different animal, and I wonder if you have to choose if you are in the end herding sheep or herding cows or what, instead of having the whole zoo, no? That is very difficult to manage, no? So just a question, because when going to the and I'm clearing this bad thing, going to the axon, if you can move to the axon, maybe again this reinforcing the clarity of these spines organizing the entire system. Mm-hmm. Again, with some consistency in terms of thickness and presence, how far they go. And this allows you to anchor different things, no? Because right now it seems like a very different thing that this complex sectional space that has a lot of things going on and inside and outside and cover and uncover, with the other that is next to it that seems like you have put a kind of very, a very heavy hat on top of, no? Saying, I'm not sure what's going on down here, but but they are not going to get out of order. I have, I really have something like boom. So I'm a little bit, a little bit confused, let's say, no, because of this many strategies that you have, no, here, and I think totally. I also totally understand this is your second semester and you are exploring like a bunch of things and you are just moving all the things together and exploring all of them. But at some point, I think it makes sense to edit and to say, okay, let me focus in this. No, I have learned a lot from all these pieces, but now let me select and explore one or two and see what happens, as opposed to keep just like trying everything. No. Because there are very, very nice moments and in the line perspectives that are very clear and very simple and very, you see all these terraces and open spaces and closed spaces, but a little bit more of clarity would help. And maybe line drawing.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I mean, as I'm looking more at it, it seems like you're working with a system sort of almost of single family houses with a courtyard stacked, right? And moved around. So the aggregation is really like, it seems like it's the whole apartment. And I think it's very intriguing, very interesting, this external terrace that you, like this huge communal balcony that you start introducing into the courtyard. And I wonder if what is the balance between the private terraces that seem to be very, very generous and the communal one? It seems like there might be some overlaps or even connections. I can't tell, like, if you physically can, like, it's a little hard to tell what are you connecting, even though it's really, I mean, there's so much work here. It's amazing and how you like understand the whole system. Maybe it's taking me time, but I wonder if the communal terraces that are outside could, if they're not competing somehow with the private ones in the hierarchy, then you're also creating these wonderful potential for terraces at the upper level. And I know those are, the difference might be that the terraces in the houses are covered, right? I think it's they seem that they're always covered, these big balconies. Is that correct? Yeah. And then the other ones are exposed to the sun, so that's a clear distinction. And yes, and how do you imagine, like, what is the driver of these terraces outside, and do you how do you access them? Is it through passing the elevator and then sort of behind?
Yeah, past the elevator.
Yeah, I think I wonder if the stair and the linkage to that space, what is the relation to the terraces that are like right next to them, right? I think it's interesting, this community of terraces that are inside.
I think we need to move into next as we change, so we have 3 minutes to half or 5 minutes, so we have time to change. You have last comments or?
Yes, I'd like to make a couple of points. One, I think, Kaylan, you are in this discovery moment, and I think it probably would be good for you to grab some reference in architectural history, something that you really are passionate about, that helps you to solve things and to find a vocabulary and to see how you want to do the openings and the relations with materials and so on. So I think that's a moment in which your intuitions could benefit from having a solid historical architectural references. That's one comment. And the other is that I'm going back to your sectional home And I think is a fascinating sectional home because it's not only sectional, it's helicoidal, no? It's a really round plan of enormous complexity, and no wonder that you have had difficulties in the aggregation because it's a beast in itself, and it's beautifully drawn, and only that house it's especially three-dimensionally complex enough, no? I also see that the water is stormy in the pool, no? There's a hurricane going, but and the water is making waves. It's really, I mean, I think that the entire course is really important, and I think these moments of learning in these intermediate steps is a critical one. Very well drawn and of extraordinary complexity. Again, it would benefit through a kind of cultural lens filter now about, well, what kind of language of architecture is this? No, how can I really finalize this?
Right.
And you are not showing it in the concept board, but I am looking at it and enjoying.
Yes, the perspectives are great. I love the line drawings and the space in between. It's wonderful.
Thank you both.
So let's move into Asher.
Thank you, Kaylan.
Behar. So who is the host? Olivia, perfect. You're in charge. And any question in terms of allowing share screen, everything under control?
I think I got it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So
Iñaki, I'm going to follow your arrow because I'm having a hard time finding the words of the students. So I'll follow you. The next one is on the...
This is not a board. This is the entire field. It's gigantic.
I think if you do Control F, you can search for my name.
Okay, and the next one is Vela. Asher. Thank you.
Can everyone see the PowerPoint? Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
My name is Asher Behar. I'm a second-year undergraduate, and my professor was Sonsoles Vela. My project was titled The Urban Maze, Compression and Expansion. This is the completed axonometric of the redeveloped site. For early work we worked on developing small-scale housing projects of 1,200 square feet. For my horizontal home, I focused on layering the golden means to create a figure ground diagram, where I then used the squares to inform the spaces, while the golden means were used to form the circulation. This was my primary precedent for the urban block redevelopment. For the vertical home, I also used the golden mean to form my spaces, but this time stacked it vertically to create a central circulation point, and then explored it in the z-axis. And then for the sectional home, I again explored the golden means, but this time layering them and using massing and voiding to create double height spaces and interesting elements. Using the horizontal home, I derived my units for the collective housing. I found that it was evenly divided into 3 equal segments with solid modules that provided distinct wet and private spaces. Utilizing these, I pulled these modules out to create 3 different typologies of small, medium, and large spaces with distinct program. For the community and precedent, I was targeting young couples and new families due to the school located directly south of this site, and it being in the uptown area created a great environment to raise a family in New Orleans. And the primary precedent I used was by Carlos Ferrater. This facade was something I was really interested in, to express the idea of compression and expansion through movable louvers that not only would act as a shading mechanism to react to the harsh heat of New Orleans, but also created a dynamic shifting facade. Looking now at the site, this is the existing site with the black squares highlighting the buildings that will be retaining after the redevelopment. This is now my redeveloped concept, where I tried to maintain the existing proportion of houses and their plots in relationship to the neighborhood to not make things seem too proud of scale. Moving into my concept diagram, I really was analyzing the site conditions. I was drawn to this moment of compression and then expansion as you move between the two pre-existing buildings on the left of the site. Taking this concept, I further developed it to start to create my urban maze through the site with a meandering path that moves alongside the buildings, allowing opportunity to explore. And then taking a look back at the horizontal home, extrude the spatial qualities of that public space in the center that had the compressed views sliding past the different masses in each of the cardinal directions. Utilizing this design strategy, I overlaid it to the maze to create different plazas alongside the path, and then combining these two typologies led to the final scheme for the master plan. Taking a look back now at my axonometric, you can see some of these qualities described earlier with the masses creating this meandering path through. Taking a look now at the ground floor program, there was lots of different amenities available to both the residents as well as people visiting. There's a sauna, a bike shop, an indoor-outdoor gym, several food and coffee spaces, and then each building contains its own vertical core or cores with common spaces for the residents. And then additionally, each of the different plazas have a different program specific to that location. Taking a look now at the ground floor plan, the path, I really tried to again express this idea of compression and expansion, where as you move between narrow points between forms and masses, it compresses down before expanding out into the plazas. And sometimes the path would start to pull away from itself, creating these little pockets of either flower beds or points for children to run through and explore. Continuing up, this is a typical floor plan with the units being accessible on each side of each core. Moving further up. As you reach the third floor, there's an elevated pool and lounge area located to the southeast for residents that is has nice views as well as gets lots of natural sunlight. And continuing up, the fifth floor is a bit different in the sense that it's not accessible from the main vertical cores. Rather, these are the top floors of the few duplex units that each have their own stair inside. Taking a closer look at the bottom right-hand unit, this is a zoomed-in plan where you can again see the relationship of the units to the cores as well as the terraces. In this instance, all the units are compressed up against the vertical cores, where the terrace is located on the outside. And then as you rise up, the scheme now shifts, where the units are shifted away from the cores on one side to create these moments of expansion. In this, you can see a closer view of the pool area. And these are the duplex units. And this is my compression and expansion diagram. We're starting with the base mass of a typical building. I then inserted 2 vertical cores to access each unit, or in the smaller forms, 1 vertical core. The mass was then lifted off the ground to create opportunity for public program and offer further privacy for residents from the exterior. Overlaying then a grid system on the mass to organize easement placement. Compression and expansion techniques were then applied to the mass to identify where the units and voids would be. Removing these voids creates the semi-private terraces for the residents, and then extending some of the upper units to create duplexes in a more interesting elevation from the exterior. And then finally, I added the dynamic shifting sliding facade system to further complete this concept of compression and expansion, as well as to provide residents with a better privacy and passive cooling systems. Taking a look now at this section, you can see this relationship of the voids to the units and the cores and how they interact amongst each other. Additionally, the upper left pool area is depicted here. This cross section shows the units cut lengthwise and how they are divided up, as well as a relationship of the stair system to the units, as well as the space that it creates underneath for the exterior. And this final section again depicts this compression and expansion system of the massing and voiding really clearly here. And then this is now an elevation that shows that exact same location, but from the street side, where you can see the facades and everything is in the closed manner here. Taking a closer look at the stair system, I really wanted to create a unique element that exemplified my core concept. Taking a cascading stair, there are moments now of compression as you rise up the stairs before ending up at each landing where it expands out again. This also creates a large overhang on the backside of the building, which residents could then use to interact with and find a shaded spot in the New Orleans heat. And then here's that stair system in plan from bottom on the left to top on the right. And then finally, here's a completed view of the southern building in Axon with the facade system. experience. These are the perspectives, and this is again at that southern building looking at from the street side. This is where you imagine looking at from the school. And then this view, some of the sliding panels are shifted open to reveal the balconies behind. This is that northeast plaza has the water feature and primary green space of the site. And then here's a view looking out from one of the moments of expansion on the 3rd floor, all the way on the west side of the site. There are 3 different simple massings, with the small for small couples or one person, medium being for small families or a couple, and large being for the largest types of families. Again, taking a look at this diagram to see how I extracted the unit types from the horizontal home. And then this is a close-up look of the small unit type with the diagram on the left, showing how many are located on the 2nd floor, which would be a typical floor plan. There are 2 variations of the medium unit with either an extended living room space or a larger balcony to provide some variety for people looking to live here. And this is again repeated with the largest unit type with extended balconies or larger living space. And then these are the 3 different types of duplex units. There's not many of them, but there's a double stacked single, a double stacked double, and then a double stacked double with a single on top. This diagram shows cross ventilation strategies used, where if you open up all the sliding panels on either side, you get a nice cross breeze through the entire units. And then here is unit information. And here you can really clearly see the division I've set up with the units with between nighttime space in the top, wet zones in the middle, and then daytime in the bottom. And then they run congruent, so it's very easy to construct. And then here's the axonometric one last time. And finally, the exploded axon. I really wanted to emphasize the compression and expansion techniques used, with the masses sliding in from the side and the voids dropping down from above to show the relationship to each other. And that is it. I can move to the concept board map too. That's easy.
Asher, I really appreciate the presentation and the effort you've made to explain all the nuances and the complexities of the project. I'm still looking at the plans that are very intricate. And I have a question. Is it, in essence, you're creating, and I'm wondering how many, right? You're creating this space that sometimes is front yard and backyard, right? Like it seems like your units always have a front door and a back door. In some cases, would you say that's
so in
an ambition of the project, or
yes and no.
Result? Is it an ambition that you were looking for, or is it a result of the aggregation that sometimes resulted in this front back door, which I think is interesting? Just wanted to hear from you that process.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'd say like front and back door as much as front and back space, because in all the schemes, the units are accessible from the side as like the primary entrance. And I was really interested in taking that horizontal home I had originally moved and moving that kind of private module and aligning those along the backside with a large public space up front. So in a sense, yes, where there's a distinct all the units would run along the same line, so that like in this instance here, this is all like the back door space, I guess, and then this would all be the front. Yeah.
Because I think that would be helpful to see in the aggregation, not so much because the individual units as you've drawn, you can't see really the access, right? Is that because it varies? Is that?
Yeah, so there's the one issue I had with this stair system I developed was I couldn't create pathways running along the entire side. That like as you rose up, the entryways would also have to kind of cascade. So in like this instance here, you can see the doors set in over here, and then in different units, it kind of sometimes will be further down if you move into a different floor plan. If that answers your question.
Yeah, so the cascading stairs allowing you to come in at different places of the unit, right? Yet I wonder, I was looking like, okay, this is a very complicated stair, it can be very beautiful. And I was wondering, thinking of systems, like what amazing advantage is it giving you in the organization of the units? Besides it being a wonderful space, or is it simply the shifting of the door? How do you see that becoming something that you say, I need this stair to shift? Because it's just my system is about I'm trying to find like how that system is tying into the idea of the units and the living. I think it's very intriguing, but yeah.
When I was first kind of creating my master plans, I was doing a lot of voiding, figure ground diagrams. And I had this unique opportunity with each of the forms to have a large space for a big kind of landmark staircase instead of kind of creating a more utilitarian feature. And this was something I kind of just discovered online. I saw a picture and I was really enamored with it for a while. And I really exemplified, I thought, the concept I was trying to move forward with. So it was kind of a struggle, I'd say, more than a feature of trying to make it work with the unit typologies I created. But I think in the end, it ended up working out pretty well, where specifically if you look kind of here on this top floor, on like this one side over here, it's a small stairwell, like very small space to find a door. And then if I try to tie that in my units, I'd always end up having to walk into the bedroom. So I found the simplest solution then was to shift it so that all of my, with my axon, the simple solution was then to have the void space be on the left side of all those stairwells so that no matter how you exit the stairs, you'll be entering into an open air scenario and not have to go through a front door. So it was kind of a workaround trying to resolve issues of a conflicting system there, but it was something I didn't really want to lose.
Right, because I have the feeling that the stair is something, and I think even the way you're drawing it is something that was sort of inserted, and the units are trying to find their way, the units and also these shared sort of breathways, right, that are happening. But what the aggregation is causing is that sometimes in some instances, you have two systems, I think. One is the breathways or the cuts through, and then the stair. And sometimes these stairs are falling right next to one of those shared spaces, yet you have walls separating them, right? For example, and I'll go into a mirror because I can maybe move it a little bit better. For instance, here, not sure where I am, second floor. Can you see where I am, or I don't think you can see my cursor.
I can turn that on.
I think you can turn that on.
Yeah,
thank you. Right, like here, for example, okay, so this is it seems like a small unit, right? That it's next to, oh, that's a living room, it's not a breathway. Can you show me,
that
like
is
here?
That is a breathway
Okay,
right there.
Oh, that is a breathway. Right, so for instance here, this is an open breathway, right? Like, so it rains here, is that right? And then, and the unit is a small one, it's a 1-bedroom, right? So would you say that that's a private breathway of that particular unit because there's a door, right? And in some cases, these are shared. I'm just trying to find the rule, since you have this very intricate system, or the pieces just falling, right, in different places. So these are meant to be private or shared, or both?
So they're kind of, I was defining them as semi-private spaces, and then there's a couple that are private. For instance, if you move to, let's see where we want to be. This first floor, like, let's see if we can draw right here. Like this unit, this right here, I would consider the private tiers because it's only accessible through the unit, but the majority of them are tended to be, I don't know how to erase that. The majority of them are tended to be kind of semi-private, where maybe you're friends with your neighbor and you want them to come over to hang out in your patio, but it wouldn't be something most people would think to walk off on that floor and just like hang out in a terrace next to your house. It'd be more of like you invite someone over. It's like it's not exactly your space, but it's kind of figured to be yours. So
for example, this one, who does it belong? Is this a shared one in this instance here between two households?
Yeah, that one would then be a shared one between two.
Right. So I think that's the one I'm referring to, like front door, back door, or front yard, backyard, right? Where you have a space that is shared between the two. And you know, and I think with this system, I think it's really interesting, and I wonder if there would be a way, you know, like moving forward, if we could like to systemize, not to make them equal, because I do like the variety that sometimes these are falling, you know, at odd places, but you know, the shared spaces are these are always complicated spaces to share in housing, right? Because sort of sometimes like the stronger personality will maybe take over that shared space, right? Like, you know, that person starts leaving their chairs because they're just more going faster, you know, and the other one sort of shies away. So these are, you know, whenever you have these big, amazing shared spaces, there's always a moment of potential conflict, which I think it's interesting, you know, but so I wonder if there's an idea where these are always belonging to one and then you're invited in, or if these sometimes fall next to the stair and then they are, for example, this one right here, can that be opened up and then it's shared, it becomes public and shared by everyone sort of in the community? I know that's very close, but then that door might have had to, you know, be managed differently. Yes, so I was looking at that, because I think it's a fascinating idea to have this thing, but I think it's, I mean, it's very, I mean, you've managed a lot, all of you have managed so much complexity, which is amazing. So, you know, asking a lot, but yes, I would love to find a way that that's organized in a way they say, that's a system, this happens, and you have two varieties of these breathways, and then all of a sudden some are communal, and that's where everybody goes in to celebrate the kid's birthday, and you sign up, and maybe those are activated with amenities. So there are kitchens, and you can have grills and you know, stuff, and you start differentiating the breathways that are more communal and where things might happen in a more intense ways, and those who are more shy and belong maybe to a unit and are next to the stairs, so you invite someone in as a sort of like a gigantic threshold space of between my home and the community, right? And those might need to be scaled differently. Yes, that's just trying to understand the puzzle, which is fascinating.
I think there's oh, sorry, Asher.
I was going to say a quick thing to like kind of talk about that was that the part of it was that there'd be a lot of variety, so it kind of be up to the user to come and kind of pick what they would want to be and like what type of chairs that they would have to interact with. So kind of depending on each individual person, if you wanted more privacy, then you could take one with a more private balcony versus a more public. And then looking for like a community of younger children, I was thinking that people would want to play, you know, play with each other, interact with their neighbors in a very friendly fashion. Sorry.
But before I comment, a question: what is the material of the stair?
Of the stair, like the exterior piece or the interior?
The exterior.
I was kind of envisioning like a kind of like a wood, like a pale, flatter wood tone with some slight grain to it, because I was envisioning the sliding facade system to be kind of a woodish material, darker wood, to contrast with like the more plain tones of the solid masses.
And then it's an exterior space?
No, it's got a glass shell along the roof in the front, and then like cell in the back. I was just doing it so you could kind of see it clear here.
Because I think some of the issues, and I think probably maybe something that can help the terrace discussion, is that the cascading stair is very spectacular, brings you great qualities and some problems. I'm not against it. It might be not exactly a cascade, but maybe just a big space in which the stair has certain promenade, but not necessarily like a kind of rigid stair. And in any case, bring it back to your project and to your system, because my sensation is that maybe not, but you have got in love with this graphic quality of this volume, and it suddenly is like if it's not part of the rest of the project. And if you look at one of the renders or the axon, and I can, yeah, for instance, that of the Southern Street elevation, no? So so the building has a tectonic condition, no? And this box is hanging in the air, and is hanging from nothing, from a void, which is weird. So I think that this proposal would be much stronger if everything was part of the same vocabulary, even making openings. And it seems to me that the introduction of a kind of a strange thing is not helping both the legibility of this, but also actually how it works. Because when you go to the corner of the swimming pool, you have there an impossible, if you want to move the concept board to the plan, to the second floor plan, for instance. Here you have an articulation problem that is impossible to solve. No? This kind of glass volume is like against this terrace that is, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's an impossible resolution. It's this kind of problems that is like, okay, how I can do it better? I don't see the solution for this. And being this kind of a strange element that is not part of the system, it even increases more the conflict, no? So my question would be if you go to I think one of the floors that we were discussing, the terraces linked to the stair. Yeah, my question would be if the stair is part of your system, like the other units, and the terrace that is here is at some point associated to the stair, no? Because when you are in the elevation, you are doing these volumes, these openings. I don't know. I'm just improvising, but at some point you can associate the volume of the stair with the volume of the terrace as a part of the public programming of the building, no? So your stair is not only very generous in itself, but sometimes it has even an extra generosity that is the communal terrace that is accessed from the stair. I think that the semi-private, semi-public, I just don't believe. It is shared by 2 units. Great, we'll put the rules. It is mine. Okay, I put the rules. It is the neighbors. We put the rules. But it is almost mine, but not really. I think you have a problem, no? So being more clear in the architecture and saying, okay, no, this terrace is part of this stair, and it happens here, no? It happens in this moment in which I'm not only very generous with my volume, but I'm also generous adding this piece, no? But I think all this would also require you to go back to your volume and to say, okay, I'm in love with this wooden thing and all that, but I think I will use it in the next project because it just doesn't belong to this, no? And I think you have enough with the system that you have put. That is a very clear system of these boxes, modules that are sub-modulated with the facade, with the openings. All that is super coherent. Then suddenly you put this kind of belts, and it's like, wow, who has come here? Asher has now a friend that has messed up with the project. Where is this guy? Huh?
That's right there. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. We have 1 minute left to wrap up comments.
I just want to add that I like the ambitious generosity with the stairs and the public spaces, and I think also the rigor of the typologies that are maybe conventional but are really well organized and really clear, competent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Asher. And super good representation.
Thank you.
Spectacular.
Thank you guys so much for your time.
Have you finished the time or not?
Yes, there's like 2 minutes to transition. So, I mean,
I think we were
Oh, okay.
scared, Monica.
Yeah, I thought it was at the end. Well, just a last comment, just thinking of those doors that are connecting, again, I think there are opportunities there because the stair, it seems like it has its landing, but it's very tiny, and then the breatheway, and then you just find like an apartment door to it. And maybe that's the radicality, I don't know, but it just doesn't seem, I didn't hear it as part of the story. The way you're connecting the units to those breatheways, it's like either open, close, and I was wondering if there was more room there to experiment with that connection. Eso es esa final thing.
Great job, Asher.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
It's good to be able to discuss at this level. So really solid. Is Jake now?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Just let me share my screen. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Jake Davis, and I am a second-year student, undergraduate student, and my professor is Andrea Bardone. So the title of my project is The Wellness Collective. And this isometric represents the final implementation of the project. So when I did my horizontal home, I began to implement the idea of this 9-square grid and how that grid can be manipulated to fuse the public and private sphere. I also looked at the type of community that I wanted to create, such as health and wellness, or one that promotes health and wellness. When I began the vertical home project, something that I was beginning to look into was the idea of the staircase and how to work with the stairs and how it can be used to manage privacy. Also, I began to consider how different geometries can shift and offset to create certain moments of public and private space. My sectional home combined the element of this 9-square grid and the public-private relationship of the horizontal home, as well as the offsetting geometries of the vertical home. It also introduced the central vertical core, which was something that became a major component in my current project. Simultaneously, the idea of these half heights as shown in section also would later on become important elements in the wellness collective. So when looking at the site, almost all houses on the site are typical New Orleans shotgun houses, which range from 1 to 2 floors. So integrating this height and floor outlay into the wellness collective was a major goal. Another goal of integration was to consider the use of green spaces between streets and homes, which is also highlighted in this collage. With the typical long rectangular shape of the New Orleans shotgun home in consideration, the project was integrated in plan section. At a closer look, the relationship between street, green spaces, and homes is considered with sufficient space provided between the two. As in plan, the vertical integration also plays a major role in the project's development. The highest floor height of the project is only 2.5 stories due to the offsetting half heights, which will be explained further. Also, the vertical core is concealed to further this idea of the integration into the site. This precedent by Vincent Pereira Architects highlights the relationship between private housing space and the walkway, and also considers the porch as an essential component to community engagement, which is something that was later implemented into the project. The porch project on the right focuses on the typical shotgun style porch, which faces outward and creates a hybrid zone between public and private space. With this relationship in mind, I begin to consider how the porch could be used at a larger scale to promote community engagement while also allowing for privacy. The intention of the wellness community centers around 3 main points: people care, fair share, and earth care, which is based off the idea of the permaculture ethics. So people care focuses on mental and physical health, such as yoga, meditation, and creativity think tanks. The earth care focuses on community and the way in which the community can maintain significant green space and allow space for gardening. And lastly, fair share has to do with community engagement in the way that the community engages with the larger community. So in my instance, how the Wellness Collective engages with the larger New Orleans community. So this drawing highlights the community's connection to the street level as it also promotes public engagement. And it also portrays the different ground floor spaces allocated for community, such as a yoga studio on the right and a fresh market in the center. To architecturalize these intentions, there were 5 essential steps taken in my project. The first step is to divide the block into 3 subsections of the 9 square grid. The second step is to insert the vertical core into each of the 9 squares while slightly adjusting cores to accommodate the plots. The third step is to introduce massing facing eastward and westward to allow for equal sunlight and to conceal vertical cores. The fourth step is to shift massing inwards to the vertical cores to allow for ventilation between massing and to further integrate the vertical core. And the last step is to adjust the massing to accommodate light access and communal space. After implementing massing in the vertical core, private circulation is added at each floor. This perspective highlights the offsetting half heights in the relationship between the vertical core, circulation, and massing. The core shown here is concealed between units, which creates intimate moments of reveal as one navigates the site. The project in its circulation also takes the excessive amount of rain into New Orleans into account, as the units resting on top of the ground floor are cantilevered over it to allow for overhead cover as one circumnavigates the public space. The ground floor follows along the same program as the private floors while adjusting for circulation and green space. Multiple points of street access promote public engagement and openness. Simultaneously, the implementation of green spaces between the street and public space creates a more private, intimate setting as one enters the site. The ground floor program includes many different types of spaces that promote people care, earth care, and fair share, such as a yoga studio, a gym, and a fresh market. Other spaces include a large community kitchen, studio spaces, spaces for vendors, and community lounges. Circulation through the ground floor is meant to allow ease of access through the site, while also outlining community green spaces. Centered between multiple ground floor spaces is a large green space meant to unite the larger and smaller public and private sphere. The space is open and visible from the street, but fully reveals itself as one enters the site. The space can be utilized for community activities such as volleyball or frisbee, or it can be used for intimate gatherings like a picnic. The porches from the units also face outwards towards this plaza, as well as other green spaces, which further unite the public and private sphere. Connecting to the outer sphere of this central space that connects to this, connecting to this outer sphere of the central square, and in proximity to the rest of the site is the community kitchen and dining hall. The kitchen offers a space for the community to gather and socialize while also promoting healthy and sustainable food practices. The kitchen also resides next to another green space that connects to the street, so residents can eat with a view of the beautiful oak trees and passerbys from the dining hall. Opening up to the westward side of the street is a yoga studio, fresh market, and visitor center. Both spaces are open to public and private access and are moved inward from the street to create a smaller green space that offers the opportunity for people occupying the fresh market or participating in yoga to move outdoors on a sunny day. Space for a community garden is also incorporated behind the spaces in between the two vertical cores to mesh public and private. This elevation shown again highlights the different ways inhabitants can interact with the space. As one exits the ground floor, they enter the private living sphere through separate staircases, which then connect the inhabitant to the vertical cores. One navigates the site by circulating through these vertical cores and walkways that the cores feed into. Each set of massing rests at a half height of the massing opposite its associated core. This relationship of half heights is clarified in plans. So, furthermore, these half heights and their association with the vertical core allow the maximum height to never exceed 30 feet. Also, the tallest areas of the community are located inwards, so the site appears more integrated from the street view. The units for this project continue the implementation of the 9-square grid while also following the same modular program that it creates. Inspiration for this technique arose from Emilio Tuñon's Stone House, which highlights the ways in which secondary spaces can be implemented with primary spaces while also maintaining the grid. Of the total 8 units, or of the 8 total units, there are 4 pairs, with each pair being 2 stories tall. Each pair follows the same program and processes, which is first to implement the modular grid with 1 square of each unit becoming outdoor space. Second, to shift 1 row outwards for the inner and outer porch. And third, to stack the 2 units on top of each other. Each top floor unit has 1 less module to create a facade that adds to the sense of inward growth. Programmatically, each unit follows a very similar organization with living room space connected to inner and or outer porch space. So here's the first unit, Unit A. This is the Unit B program. And there's Unit B. This is Unit C. So Unit A and Unit B are meant to accommodate singles, couples, and small size families, while Unit C and D are designed to accommodate small and medium sized families. So Unit A and Unit B are a total of 6 squares or modules, and Unit C and D are a total of 9 squares. So the utilization of the inner and outer porch imitates the relationship between public and private that the New Orleans Shotgun House porch represents. Simultaneously, this new strategy focuses the idea of inner and outer porch, as the outer porch creates a public-private relationship between inhabitant and the greater New Orleans community, while the inner porch creates a public-private relationship between inhabitants. And I'm gonna stop the share and then pull up the animated axon. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. And so here's the animated axon. And this animated axon just highlights the ways in which each floor offsets and the processes of which I arrived at the site. Thank you. Also, should I continue to just share my screen? I think you're on.
With a concept board
Yeah.
if you want.
Yes, maybe it's easier. Yes, again, I mean, this is a very impressive project, and all of these projects have such depth. You know, the projects that I've seen so far, and this one, Jake, I think it's quite beautiful, the scale that you're working at in between the buildings, with this idea of the balconies facing each other and these open walkways, creating this secondary and tertiary community at different levels. And also I appreciate very much the unit. I mean, it's amazing how it's like, you know, it's like professional quality, the way the units are laid out. And I think it's interesting how you're using sort of an idea of a pavilion, and I'm here in unit A. You know, the idea that you come in through this, that's the porch, right, and the walkway. But this always sort of a pavilion, like an entry pavilion, that it's in between this public porch and private porch. I think that how that room then serves as a linkage to grow, to have a system of growth in your units. I think that works that works quite well. And can you explain a little bit? You know, it's just very believable. I'm looking at the way the cores interact with these two walkways. And can you speak a little bit? I know it's like on this grid system. And as I'm talking, I'm trying to find the ground floor and find those cores and understand how the positioning of them, like what strategies did you have for the positioning of the cores in relation to some of the units? Because I see sometimes it falls, you know, maybe in front of a bedroom and stretches a space. Sometimes it's in front of a balcony. So I was wondering about if those access. Yes, what was the system, and if you encountered that it was a system that was running through and they sort of fell where they had to, or what? I don't know. It's just I think it's interesting, the connection. I think you're muted, or
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I definitely encountered some issues when it came to that and how the vertical core fed into the massing and where it fed into. I think so. I really started with these vertical cores, and the massing was adjusted and shifted in relationship with that. And so while there was a point in which I was trying to figure out a commonality or a relationship between the core and where it feeds into in the porches, ultimately that was something I had to put a secondary and put to the side, just because of the different style of the units. And I want this site to be replicable on any, if the community expands. So the units, it doesn't really matter which ones are connected. And so if that was the case, then it would be almost impossible to create some sort of system.
Because I wondered, relating to Asher's projects and even Caitlin's project of these terraces, right, and the connection with them with the stair, and this system of this pavilion or this room that it's in between these spaces. I wonder if there's another rule overlaid, and I think it would be sort of interesting where wherever those cores fall, you then create this balcony, this porch, that it's more of a, yes, we can say communal space, but also a place where you arrive, you bump into each other in front of the elevator, just a relief, sort of in front of sacrificing one room, maybe, since you have a system of aggregation that works quite well. I wonder if there's a rule where always that room is sort of something happens right in front, or maybe they're placed in these, and I think that would be simple enough, because you have a system so worked out that it could be, I think it would make that the idea of the porch being more of a communal porch, and then you go to your private porch, semi-private porch, and then finally to your very private porch where you only have access. Yeah, I think
Jake, are you sharing screen?
I can. Do you want me to go
Yeah,
back
yeah,
to
please share the concept board.
the concept board? Okay. Sorry, I have the concept board pulled up on my. If you can give me a sec, I can pull it up while you're talking. Just because I have it on the other computer.
I'm going to put the link so you can arrive to it late faster.
Thank you. Okay. It's loading. I apologize. I had the concept board pulled up on my desktop and just go slow. Okay. Wrong one, sorry. Apologize. Oh, here it is. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you go to the site plan with the pre-existing and proposed?
Mm-hmm. Sorry. It's a little laggy. For some reason it's. Oh. Here we go. Can you guys not see that either? Does it look gray?
It's still loading. Yes.
Okay.
So
If you want, I can just pull it up on the PDF slides if that's easier.
Let me
I'm sorry about this.
let me
My
share
apologies. Computer's a little slow.
Can you see mine?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So I think this is the moment that the proposal is most convincing to me. When you explain the grain, and it's interesting that you have started looking at the street and the grain of the neighborhood, and then you do this good analysis of the existing and the pre-existing and the proposed. And I think that the section for me is really convincing of what is the grain and the texture of how you insert this, no? And Monica was saying that the system, you have worked a very good system, and it's very clear how you organize the bars, how you make the vertical circulations, and all that. I think all that is very convincing. Something that I'm really not that convinced is the units. The unit A with the entrance through the gallery, through this space, but then the other units that you are entering through the kitchen, and created a little bit of convoluted relations. But even in the small ones that you have to go through the kitchen and then go inside the room from behind the breakfast area, the subdivisions that you have, I think you could go back to this idea of the square volumes and be a little bit more truthful to that, no? And some of them are enclosed, some of them are open, but a little bit less convoluted. I think it would require some more radical decisions in terms of how do I enter here and how I organize the spaces around. I have no doubt that you could clean this up and make it much more convincing. So that's, I think you just could revisit how you have applied the strategy of the modules coming in and out. Something that I'd like to mention is that the line drawing is really good and very competent, and in the previous exercises as well. And I find much less convincing when you are adding materials and colors. Because I'm not sure if you are convinced about what you are showing. No, I see some floating bricks here, and then it seems like you want to have a kind of language of color that is very prominent with these yellow paths. No, so the yellow path, I think, works. So you may want to decide if you go to materials or you go to pop colors. And then you have to use other surfaces to which apply color or not color. No, maybe this is a stucco and it's white stucco, and suddenly there's a pink volume of stucco. No, and the yellow. So I think it requires you to rethink your aesthetic references and to think those in terms of being part of the project. No, if really circulation is a major issue, go for it. No, if you look at the MRDB tower in Madrid, the Mirador Tower, no, it has a vertical cut that is pink, and is giving like pink light to the city. No, and it's a very clear use of the color. No, and then so yeah, so some kind of constraint in that sense of what I'm really pushing. Am I pushing colors? Am I pushing materials? And then I think you need to work in that sense in your architectural lineage. No, what is the kind of vocabulary? What are the kind of architecture that you are putting forward? Or you can go to a brick, but then a brick is a tectonic material, and it's a kind of different vocabulary. And maybe the terraces are the terraces that are maybe embedded in the section, no, as you have in some cases. So maybe some clarity in terms of what the architectural lineage and language that you are embedded. And I hope it's a fair comment, because you are a second year and you are still making your first steps. But I think you quickly want to grab and to take advantage that architecture is a cultural activity, and is not just a solving crosswords exercise. It's a cultural activity, and you have a lot to grab on. So there are moments really successful, and I think there are moments that you could just work a little bit more. But again, where you in the moment of this section, I think this is really like a super convincing section for me, and I would like to see this section more developed. And I have seen some section in your slideshow, but it's not in the canvas. But really developing this further, and really developing if these overheads are overheads or not, if this is a roof, when it's embedded, when it's not, and refining this to really be truthful to the clarity of this diagram.
Yeah, I agree with Iñaki about some of the parts of the plan, right? But also, you know, looking at the porch, and again at the plans, and the perspective where the lady's sitting in the porch on a chair. I wonder about the depth of that porch, and how is that defined? If it was, if the shallowness is on purpose for a reason, or because that might give you a way of also dealing with some of the bedrooms that are just right on the walkway. So that might have, you know, lack some privacy, or you might want to avoid like the typical high window. And perhaps if, you know, if those were a bit more generous, then you could start opening windows from the rooms onto that balcony. So the ownership or the privacy of that bedroom is more embedded in the and I'm now in the plans more, looking at the typologies like Unit C, for example. where, well, that's a corner unit, but maybe like unit D. Because I find interesting thinking of this as a balcony, yet it in the language, I wonder how you're making a connection with those balconies, right? Is it the depth? Is it the material? Is it the room right adjacent to it? And I see that they're changing, but yeah, so, you know, again, is there a rule to, where am I, unit D here? And is there a rule to provide a light there? And, you know, this relationship is so close to the, you know, to where other people are walking, that I wonder if that's an opportunity to, you know, if this would be, and I know this is really hard and it's easy to say once everything is like really well drawn and squared. But, you know, speaking of taking the ideas further of the porch, you could find these other opportunities related more to ventilation and privacy and also community. Yeah. And I agree with the materials. It seems like in any case, if there's brick and, you know, maybe that should be on the ground floor where those volleyballs are, right? Where that activity and maybe the white is brought up. I'm not sure what the material culture of New Orleans is. Is it brick? Is it more brick based or stucco? I'm unfamiliar with
wooden brick.
Wooden brick and exposed brick like this, like red. Yeah.
Yeah. In this, what you were saying, Monica, with the units and the squares, no, what maybe that comment of being kind of more radical in the movements of the squares, no, that allows for entering in different ways, no, or at least having the ventilations and in different ways. But even in thinking that with something like this, that you can have a kind of distributed house, no, in which you actually have an extra access directly to the room from the outside, no. And sometimes your house you have a house here, and it's a little bit small, and now are you going to move away? Oh no, let me get a new bedroom somewhere else, no? Because I actually love my in-laws, but I just don't want them inside home, no? For instance, or whatever, no? So maybe that exploration of those modules of squares, bringing them further. Again, I think there's no question to think that the system would allow and have maybe more generosity in this, but definitely more generosity in the entrances, etc. So I think there's room to explore in this modular system that you have started here. There's a beautiful project that I have mentioned this morning of Hans Sharon. The geometry is very different because it's a kind of semicircular piece, but semicircular piece that has a kind of triangular, incredible balconies and very complex geometry. But one of the interesting things is that this guy was already proposing a distributed house with rooms that were not necessarily included inside the apartment, but with apartments that had and rooms that are accessible directly from the corridor. It's a good reference, even if geometrically doesn't work.
What's it called again?
Hans Sharon.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that actually, that's really good feedback. I appreciate it, all that.
I think I have to move to the next room. Thank you so much for the comments to both of you. And thank you, Jake, for the presentation. I'll see you later.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
I don't want to bear the responsibility of moving the concept board again. I let whoever is in charge.
All right, well, I have it pulled up, so good thing. All right, let me share my screen. All right, are you seeing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it in full screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So my name is Ella Weeks. I'm a second year undergraduate in Professor Lockhart's section. And my project is called, ooh, is that clicking through? There we go. My project is called Thoroughfare Housing because it acts as a threshold between the outer neighborhood and the internal community. So earlier on in the semester, we considered what makes housing desirable with different spatial constraints. And so in the horizontal home, I oriented all the rooms around an exterior courtyard to prioritize this central communal space, which will resurface in my co-housing project. And then in the vertical home, I tried to divide space efficiently into a series of programmatic strips, all while maintaining continuous vertical circulation, which will also come up in co-housing. And then for the sectional house, I played with solid and void, and interior and exterior, while maintaining a constant perimeter. So as for the co-housing project, as you've seen already, we began with this site in the Milan neighborhood, and these were the existing conditions with the nine square grid. And zooming in a little bit, looking at our particular block, again, this was the existing conditions. And then during my visits to the site, I was really struck by the existing houses more than anything, because even the commercial buildings like the coffee shop were clearly just renovated houses. And you can see in this first image how the language of these two buildings is really similar despite the different programmatic uses. So one is commercial and one is residential. And it's really the language of the traditional New Orleans shotgun homes that I was drawn to. And then I also noticed the front porches, of course. And they're a really common and celebrated feature of the neighborhood. And they achieve this relationship between the private residence and the public street. And that's kind of where my design took off, with this need for all the units to face the street like the existing houses do, so that everyone has a relationship to the street and to the neighborhood. So I thought about community and how to achieve community through design. And I found that it was important to give each unit a relationship to the street and to the co-housing community itself, so that people feel at home within the block and within the neighborhood. So both of those things at the same time. And I also didn't want to limit the type of community that could live here at all. I pictured it suiting a variety of different people's needs and budgets. So from the beginning, diversity was a really important component to me. And that eventually led me to design a total of 9 different units rather than just 3, but we will get to that later. And then as for precedents, I was inspired by 2 in particular. First, El Gran Badiou by a Spanish firm called Mesura. And this project is a co-housing project as well. And I think it invents a really more desirable horizontal circulation strategy. So instead of that typical kind of motel walkway, these balconies feature planters and voids cut through the ground to further the sunlight and connection between floors. And then I was also inspired by the Ministry of Education and Health by Oscar Niemeyer in Rio. And it has this kind of abstract gardening pattern done by Roberto Marx that cultivates a unique and peaceful kind of walk through the neighborhood, through the courtyard. And it also complements the hard angles of the building. So I was inspired by that as well. So for my scheme, in order to really, for the project to truly be a thoroughfare between internal community and the external neighborhood, each unit opens up on both ends. And that's both figuratively in terms of light and windows, but also literally. So both ends offer a space to sit outside and engage passersby, kind of pulling from the typical New Orleans porch idea. So on the outside, that porch takes the form of a balcony looking out at the street, and on the internal side, it's a covered patio. The bonus of this is, of course, cross ventilation. So then schematically, each building has at least one vertical core, several communal spaces, and an exterior walkway system to access all the units. And there are units on the ground level as well. And the 4 main entries are marked by the absence of a unit. So you have to pass through this kind of tunnel to enter, sort of getting at that idea of the building being a threshold. So then each of the 3 buildings focuses on one unit typology. And this is, again, getting at the idea of diversity. So the bottom left orange building focuses on a 1-bedroom unit.
while the rightmost building focuses on a 2-bedroom and the uppermost pink building with a 3-bedroom. But to keep the scheme from becoming too repetitive and regimented, each building also features 2 alternate versions of its respective typology. So there's a duplex version and a double wide version of every unit. And the double wide is kind of a play on the shotgun. And then these alternate units accommodate a greater number of bedrooms and break up the repetition on the external facades. So here's a diagram of the units kind of unfolding out from plan to section. So the darker colors represent the alternate units. And then I'll kind of manually click through my animation here. It's just the 4 plans changing from as you go up from the top to the bottom. And those darker colors are, again, the alternate units. And then again, an axon kind of representing the same thing. All right. So as a resident, you would arrive into this large park space, which is filled with an abstract gardening system to contrast the orthogonal building and honor the placement of the existing trees. So I did keep those as much as I could. And the ground floor residents can turn right from any entry and ascend the stairs into the first level walkway. These covered exterior walkways act as the building's horizontal circulation and wrap around the interior perimeter so that residents can see who's coming and going. But each unit features a barrier between itself and that walkway in the form of a planter that's recessed from the unit wall with a small void in between. And these voids repeat on all 4 levels to let light pass through and further the distance between each unit and people walking by. So essentially it's impossible to stand right outside someone's window because there's 2 different barriers in the way. So I added this perspective a little early just to show what I'm talking about. So there's the unit kind of recessed and then these planters coming forward to separate you from these bedroom windows. And up to the 2nd floor. And then the 3rd floor. So residents of other floors can turn left and enter into the vertical core. I'll go back to the ground floor. So yes, you can turn left and enter the vertical core, or you can keep going to find the communal space. There are 4 kitchens and a gym on the ground level, and then a variety of office spaces, laundry rooms, and outdoor patios on higher levels. So we'll go to, there's the last floor, and then in section. So along the circulation walkways are these adjustable sliding screens, which can be opened, closed, and then either slid in or out of the way depending on the user's needs. So you can shut out the rain or the bright sun or let the sun in depending on what you'd like. And this also gives the interior facade some movement and flexibility, and of course more privacy if desired. And there's a 2nd section. This one cuts through the vertical core and the communal spaces on the right side. So you can see the gym there. And the internal courtyard remains pretty protected by the housing since it does wrap around the entire perimeter of the street. And so it's a good place to sit in the sun, walk a dog, or do yoga, things like that. And from the outside, you can see how the alternate units break up the pattern of the facade, both with the windows and the balcony there. So there's like a different unit there and here, kind of mirrored from the typical pattern. And then as for experience, we're now on the top level of one of those communal spaces, enjoying the view out. This particular room is a shared kitchen meant for cooking and sharing meals together. And secondly, we're now entering the largest building. These entryways provide an open view of the street as well. So there's another connection to the outside. And then we saw this one earlier, but again, it's what you might see on the way to your unit. And if this was your unit, you'd enjoy a view out the opposite way to the central courtyard. All right, so as for the units, in total, there are 60. And as I said, there are 3 main typologies, but also 3 subtypes for each. So in total, I have 9 different types of units. So we'll start with just the first 1-bedroom unit. Each unit tries to follow the same general layout with a large open living space in between the entry patio and the balcony, and then 1 or more private dwelling spaces off of that. And this particular typology is mirrored in plan to create a larger shared entry patio between the 2 units. So this one actually mirrors, and that entry is shared. And then this 1 bedroom expands into a 2-bedroom double wide unit. So again, it's that same unit, but kind of multiplied, and then into a duplex version as well. And then we'll go to the second type of unit. This is the 2-bedroom. Again, it's in this blue building. And then it can be doubled into the 4-bedroom unit, and then, or the duplex, which is a 3-bedroom unit. And then the third type of unit is a 3-bedroom, which then can become a 6-bedroom double wide or 4-bedroom duplex. So in total, there are 9. So again, each unit opens up to both the interior and the exterior of the project and allows for air to flow all the way through, as well as the visual and physical connection to both realms, so that the residents truly feel like they're a part of the co-housing community and the neighborhood community at the same time. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you very much, Sheila.
Oh, thanks. I'll go to the concept board.
Hi, Ella. I really like the simplicity of your project. You know, you seem to have found a system, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the ambition of the project, of all the projects, is affordability, right, and a mix of income. So you know, so finding a system that is simple enough, but that offers possibilities, and that offers, you know, climatically these are working well. The living dining space is clearly ventilating, and the rooms, and I think that the simplicity allows you to bring more interest in those spaces and more generosity in those spaces that are really the buffer spaces between the public, the private, and so on. You know, just a simple shift of the space and creating I'm here on the first floor plan. Where am I? I don't know. It's not labeled. I think the one below. Yeah. Right. You know, just a simple shift, right, and then just the entry through it, and so on, and then the variations are also seem to be working. You know, and I think that system has a little bit more richness that you can start finding more connections even. For instance, and I know this complicates a little bit the firewalls and all that, but you know, you can start borrowing rooms, right, from the other side, and introducing, maybe that's more expensive, right? But and introducing varieties within the system, although you're doing it already, you know, with different bars and different configurations. But also one advantage that I think it's right there, and it could be exploited more, is the idea that this room, you know, you can think of this as a setback, but you can also think of this as this room that is invading a really wide walkway, right? Like you could read it like that's the walkway, right? And then you have sort of a pavilion invading. It's the same way of saying that. If you think about it that way, then you could start thinking of that room and its bathroom as having the opportunity either to be connected to either, but also having the opportunity of a small satellite unit, you know, for working from home, and so on, because and I think this is the little bit the comment with Jake's that I was alluding to, right, about the shallowness of the balcony and the opportunities that it affords socially, so that this room then, you know, in changing conditions, or if you need to rent it out, or you need that extra income, or you have a family member that wants an independent entry, if you have your little office there, and I think that connection is right there. I think the gap and the planter is it's quite nice, and like any system that repeats, always the corners are the tricky ones, right? So if in the 9 square grid, you know, Jake, is the central room is the tricky one to solve in these systems, you know. So I think the, you know, these ends, they could start becoming also exceptions, like you're introducing those alternative units, and maybe that's where they need to happen, because they all of a sudden that one, you know, can it's always tricky because like, okay, that, you know, can I make that bigger? Of course not, because this is nice to look out, right? But then this one is really privileged because nobody's passing in front and so on, right? You start having a system that is modular, but you start finding these hierarchies and the good ones and the not so great ones. And maybe those opportunities of exceptions can start to affect maybe the whole, you know, the whole thing. That's just a, you know, but I do like the simplicity that it's a very clear system, but still it has a lot of rich moments. Maybe in the views, let's see if I go, is that? Okay, where are the views? You know, maybe in the views, I lose a little bit that sensibility because of maybe the materiality. And is this the ground floor, or you mentioned that this was an early one? This entry here. This could be any floor. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. Are these like are these representing glass windows? Yeah. Glass doors? Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where there's a room for also start to think of domesticity and how those what are they? Are they sliding, or they all have a handle, so they look like they're maybe folding, or
sliding.
Sliding. Okay. Okay, maybe it's the frame and the way it's depicted, but you know, if sort of like the warmth that the plant is conveying, I in the view and the warmth that the planting is conveying, I wonder with the windows, you know, could also achieve that level of sensitivity and domesticity that I think, you know, the views are maybe lacking. It looks a little bit like an office space and so on. And if this is going to be really, really transparent, especially at night, then it means that the social space of the house is exposed, right? Which might be okay, but you know, in the end, will you end up having a curtain there next to the kitchen and so on? So these are questions that affect also how these things are organized.
And that's why I added the screens on the very end of the corridor. And
where are they?
Do you see the concept board? Am I sharing that?
I'm here in the concept board, following your cursor.
So here, so there's the system of screens that they slide behind each other and can be like opened and shut according to how private or public you want to be.
But they're outside of the walkway, right? So people are walking, right? So the neighbors are walking right in front. It's okay, you know. This always it's the eternal issue of collective housing, right? Like that limit of privacy and public, and it's just about, you know, finding that second layer of the smaller details that at the level of the person opening that door, cooking at night, you know, walking in their underwear from, you know, to get a glass of water, but forgot that the curtain is not in, and, you know, things like that. But that's just maybe getting into the small grain of the housing. But since it was mentioned that you begin from inside out, I was also wondering how did you begin from inside out? So.
Ella, very delicate, the drawing and the representation. Thank you. Sensitivity. The site plan with the 9 blocks that you have under the typologies, it's very compelling. The texture that you are drawing fits very well in the city. And if you move next to the ground floor, I think I think the ground floor has even more promises that maybe because you have the existing house, no, and another existing house, and another, and then you have another set of volumes that are kind of playing really well with this, no? Of course, the corner is always an issue, as I'd like to draw it this way, no? So here I think it's kind of really convincing. But then when you move to the typical floor, this, if you scroll a little bit below, maybe you can even fit the same drawing there. No?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the clarity is a little bit lost. The grain, no, that the ground floor talks very well about the grain of the city and about the combination of entrances, alleys, spaces in between. And then when you go to the upper floor, it all becomes a little bit of the same mass, no? So in a way, and then let me clear this. When you go to the axon, for instance, is when these issues of syntax or grammar, of however you want to call it, shows more. No, it's unclear to me that these and these are the same volume. No, no, and it happens. It suddenly it goes kind of very like small protruding things coming out from a big thing, no?
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of weird, and it's not like that, because in the program inside is not that, no? In the program inside, this is actually one piece, no?
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that can be reconsidered in terms of formal clarity, because your pieces, your components, everything is like fitting very well, but then when they get together, they are like collapsed, like if everything was the same, no? And I think that's, you are almost there, let's say, but there's a kind of syntactic grammar, no? How you construct the phrase, no? With the words that are right words. And I guess that this is something that you could just mature and elaborate as you grow as an architect, no? Perhaps one thing that I think it should be said is that you have everything. You don't really care about the orientation. So you have the same balconies or the same galleries, north, south, east, and west. And I am lucky that I have porch looking at the south, and I use the porch all the time. My neighborhood in the other side of the street, the porch is like sad. And he doesn't use the porch nothing. No, mm-hmm. So actually the orientation is really important, and I think that's something that has not been considered here, and I think it should be considered, and it might get you to a better resolution, because it might give you a kind of different, less uniformity to the inside and to the outside, mm-hmm. and a little bit more of play in between the two sides, no? But on the other hand, I think that the line work here in this plan is fantastic. The units are really competent. You might take some risks, as Monica was suggesting before, moving in and out and giving some more options, but they are very convincing. And while it's kind of we were discussing about the screens and these big shutters, no? But nevertheless, the architectural language is very clear, no? You have the slabs there, and then you have the big pieces that can slide or not. I'm not sure, but this is that the phrase in the composition of the facade is very well stated, no? The syntactic articulation of the different components is really well articulated.
Thank you.
Yes, the presence of the existing house also is a bit, it's sort of framed right between these very big buildings. You know, when I'm looking at the axonometric and when I see like this isolated porch here, right? That is, and then when I look at the relationship of the porch, I think you have an opportunity there to work with these extending porches in your new architecture, and you know what kinds of you know, they're very exposed, which is very different. It's more of a balcony, not so much of a porch. And I don't know if that was the intention or not, but I think there could be an opportunity also to rethink those so that they're maybe not the conventional balcony, but they become closer to the porch that you were looking at carefully, you know, which has you know, the pillars and the canopies and how that's shading you from the sun and so on. So that the language is really reacting, and also the scale maybe. So they're, you know, maybe a sort of stepping down or of your building to so that it doesn't look like, okay, this is the next house to be demolished, you know, it's just waiting there. It's sort of singled out, which it might be. So yeah, that's just another comment. In the corner, it works better because it has its autonomy, right? But then this one is tricky because it's sort of in between these big blocks with a language that it's more of a modernist balcony rather than reacting to that. So there's another opportunity there to rethink those balconies closer to what you were your ambitions of looking at those porches, which I think it was really nice and important.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The good thing is that the bones of the project would allow to do all these tweaks very, very clearly and very easily. It's not what Monica was suggesting now. And
I think these communal porches are really wonderful. The ones that are sort of peeking out as an idea, right? Peeking out into the central space, and they are covered. I think those are a nice counterpoint also to the individual balconies.
Yeah, it's a kind of interesting sequence of
right,
no, or of reinterpretation of this that you could apply to these more public volumes as well, no?
Mm-hmm.
And then making the difference between the public volume that is facing south in one side, north in the other. You go and fill the north and open the south with the porch. So you have the bones to make all these movements and adapt it to the place, I think, quite easily somehow. Yeah. Well, nothing is easy. Okay, but
nothing is easy.
When you
Nothing is hard.
When you have done so much, then it's easy for us, no? You can say, hey guys, yeah, it's easy for you because I have done the work, no? But
well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Iñaki and
you.
Monica, and also, of course, Ella, for your presentation. We are just in time, so we're going to move to the next student. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you, Guillermo.
Hello, I will share my screen. Okay, so hi, my name is Sari, and I titled this project Linked Living. To launch this project, I first looked at the 3 homes we previously designed. The horizontal home design revolved around a pinwheel concept with a central courtyard. And the vertical home consisted of a series of mezzanines and explored the use of stairs for both storage and service spaces. The sectional home is produced by the vertical spiraling of voids, which become outdoor terraces and subsequent extrusions of the private bedrooms. So I began the design process for the collective housing project by treating the footprints of these homes as puzzle pieces. And by mirroring and repeating these pieces, I arrived at a starting point for my concept. And then I again referred to these plans when composing each unit type and borrowed certain strategies from them. And the goal of this design for the collective housing project is to create an interconnected community through the introduction of shared courtyards and resting spaces. This is an aerial view of the current state of the surrounding neighborhood of the residential block. I examined the current condition of backyards and open spaces as indicated by the green on this diagram, and made an analysis of scale between the courtyards I propose in the project and those already existing on the block. Additionally, I researched courtyard spaces specific to the French Quarter to further understand the type of experience I wanted these areas to produce. And my initial inspiration for the project was the Nexus World Housing Complex by Stephen Hall Architects. So for the design, I organized the ground level by linear bars, which differentiate public, private, and collective spaces. This diagram displays the variation in courtyard program, while this one demonstrates the grid of circulation throughout the block. And the purple tones in this diagram represent the upper level unit and circulation conditions. The ground level is defined by alternating collective program and courtyards to encourage social interaction and promote amicable and healthy relationships between residents of varying demographics. These spaces include a daycare, yoga studio, gym, laundromat, mailroom, and cafe. The edges of the project that interact with the street consist of different types of markets and public seating areas that serve to balance the privacy of residents while maintaining porosity in order to connect to the larger neighborhood. Oops. And this scene shows the market in action. Courtyards are located in the voids established by the unit distribution to balance outdoor and indoor spaces. These include a tree garden, flower garden, outdoor seating area, playground, and yoga space. These areas have the propensity to connect everyday activities with the outdoors while also improving natural light and ventilation conditions. This close-up depicts the playground courtyard and daycare space, and this perspective looks into a neighboring courtyard. And this perspective is looking up from inside a courtyard. Residents can use the vertical circulation course to access their units and the adjacent patios. The circulation cores access a maximum of 4 units on each level, reinforcing the intimacy and neighborly spirit of a tight-knit community without relinquishing the individuality of the inhabitants. The layout of the typical floor plan was decided through mirroring and extending the unit types. There are a total of 64 units, starting at level 2, raised 10 feet off the ground. There are 19 of the smallest with 1 bedroom and 1 bath, 17 of the medium size with 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, and 28 of the largest with 4 bedrooms and 2.5 baths, and which also consists of 2 floors made up of the geometries of type A and type B. And in each unit type, the master bedroom is located in the far end of the wing to maximize privacy. By alternating the unit types at each level, voids are produced to allow for ventilation and sunlight permeability. This also promotes interaction between diverse family types from varying economic backgrounds. This section is cut through the units, balconies, collective program below, and the courtyards. And this elevation is taken through the courtyards and is looking at the facade of the project. And here the voids produced by alternating the unit types are expressed. This perspective from the street corner depicts the contrast in facade between the wood paneling and the intersecting concrete forms. And this materiality is suggestive of the underlying grid of the scheme. And then I will quickly show my animation. And this animation is showing the different layers of the project. I will switch to concept board now. And thank you.
Sorry, can you go to your axonometric?
Yes.
Just zoom in on that. And thank you for the complete presentation and the the really well done description of your project. So these buildings, are they 3 levels? There looks like there's some that are 2 and there's some that are 3 or 4.
Yes, so they're varying levels. The first floor is all collective program and courtyard space and circulation, and then the units start at level 2. And buildings vary from 5 levels to 3 levels.
Okay, so just jumping out immediately to me, the scale of the project in plan is working extremely well with the kind of the relationships to the surrounding buildings. I think that the block scale that you've developed and sort of the cadence around the block, especially in plan, seems to be very convincing. I think that the shared outside space is also very convincing at the block level, the way you created these kind of shared courtyards at the ground level, but also the way that that you share spaces up in the upper level of the units seems to be quite convincing. I think that the balance of the amount of vertical circulation with the number of units that you have is good. We've seen some that are a little bit over the top in terms of the number of cores, but you have 8 cores and 64 units, and I think that's kind of a nice balance. So I think that's well worked out, and the way you've distributed the units on each floor, where you have larger and smaller units together, it seems that that is a kind of way to achieve some democracy in the mix of units. So I think all of those things are quite good. I'm still curious about materiality and the language of the architecture. It seems to be kind of ignoring orientation a little bit. So I'd be curious to hear about climate and the architectural language, and then the way in which you've decided to hold the street edge in some locations, but then not in other locations, where you've created teeth along the street edge. It seems deliberate to me, but I'm kind of curious about the success of that, because it seems like you had to put fences in some of your renderings. So I know that's a lot, but that's what I see in the project, and I really appreciate the thoroughness of it in order to get to that stuff quickly. Thanks.
Yes, I guess in terms of your question about materiality, the system I was following was using the wood paneling for all of the facades that were north-south, and then the concrete was those intersecting forms that were the other axis of east and west. Sorry, what was your other question?
Okay, so the language of the architecture relative to the orientation, I think you're starting to get at that, but I'm sort of curious about what it is specifically that you would use wood to do. I mean, is it shut? Am I reading shutters there? Is that what it is?
Yes, the balconies on some of these units and all of the patio spaces that are off of the circulation core can all be shut. And same with the units, the wood that is on the unit facades can be shut to close the windows as well.
Can you just show us your rendering? I want to
Yes.
sort of understand that. Because I think that study of the courtyard scales and all that stuff is really great. the language here where you've taken bites out of the street edge is a little bit curious to me, you know. But I do think that the way and maybe you haven't really wrung this idea out enough yet, but I really think that you're getting at something with these shutters if you can control, you know, because it's something that's worked for, you know, hundreds of years, particularly in New Orleans. So, I mean, the punched opening in the masonry or the concrete versus the kind of flexibility of the wooden shutters. I just long for like a real convincing statement from you about that. And I don't think it would change much of your presentation to do that. So thank you.
Sorry, some comments, maybe starting with this perspective. I just, so especially the ground floor is drawn fantastically. It's really exquisite, especially the ground floor. It's like one wants to stay there like for a long while, no? And explore that. It's really great. I have a little bit of an issue with kind of decisions that you are superimposing to the architecture. That is a little bit misleading. For instance, in the ground floor, when you enter these volumes, well, give me the render 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, because I remember, no, but here you have, this is an entrance, no, to your building below this volume.
Yes.
No, so it seems like a little bit contradictory to say, okay, this is my very heavy building, my very heavy element of the building that is going to be the one that I'm trying to make it transparent and bring someone to come inside, no?
Yes.
It seems a little bit like initially a contradiction, let's say, but let's keep exploring. If you can go to the typical regular floor that you have in the right, and maybe zoom a little bit more. So this is how I understand your ideas. No, it seems to me that the core of the system is this one.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
And that gives you access through this shared terrace to these units. No. And then you have the other element. And my sense is that you have a straitjacket, the program, inside these L's that seems like falling from a Tetris. And you have a straitjacket then so much that you have these situations of having a bedroom here that goes with another bedroom in the back, a very different configuration here to this one, that it doesn't seem like you are going from the space to the architectural expression, that you have defined a set of volumes and now you are fitting things inside, no? Very skillfully, but fitting things, no? My sense is that you're in this system of yours, this could be whatever. I'm sorry because these are terrible drawings, no? But you could attach or you could hang anything from that core, no? And instead of that, you have this kind of very, very, very rigid system of L's that are always the same L, and even more unsettling to me is that when you go to the I'm going to draw here, but when you go to the axon or to the drawing, this L that basically is the same. No. This is a really like, looks like concrete bar, no? And then you have the nice, fluffy, woody, and kind volumes that are in between those, no? And this volume and this volume have nothing to do one with the other, but in your volumes in architecture, they are the same, no? While this and this are basically the same, and they are like completely opposite. So I see kind of these contradictions that for me it would ask to rethink a little bit what is the real essence of the project, no? And what this essence of the project allows you to do. And I think is this core that allows you to attach and react in different ways. And maybe not necessarily cutting it in half because it doesn't fit complete when it arrives to a little bit lower in the left. If you scroll a little bit lower in the left, no, you have, and let me take out this. You because you have this house here, then you say, oh, you know what? I'm gonna do the same. That is actually this, but I don't like this protrusion here, and I'm going to complete it, no? But I just keep everything as it was, no? So I think I think this is a fascinating starting point, and I wonder how would you reconsider this in a way that is a little bit less rigid, and I'm not sure you really need to have like everything like perfect, because oh my God, this is like Platonic. This is the most perfect thing ever, no? It's like, can you lose yourself a little bit and okay, I have my vertical things. With this I can go to the infinite, no? Now let me be kind and let me give response to everything that is needed. Let me react to the different things that I have around. My reaction to the city may be different than my reaction to the neighbor or to my own neighbor. That's my question. Sorry, I'm suspicious of some of perfection.
Yes, I think, Sari, I agree with some of the comments, and you know, a couple of things. When I think whenever there's a system and you have a and I agree with the ground floor is really fascinating. It's a beautiful drawing, and I can imagine also getting lost there. And when I go to the upper floor, I'm also missing the upper one to understand how those units have two levels and what is the relation to the terrace and if there's another terrace. So I might be misreading your project a little bit, but it seems like you have a system down, right? Like Iñaki was saying, like very rigid, and it looks, everything's aligning. But then when you look into the units, that's where it gets a little bit lost. And it seems like the system is not helping the units, but they're sort of shoved in, right? Like I think Iñaki was pointing out. But there is something really nice, I think, about the stair leading to a balcony. So the entry to your house is actually a balcony that overlooks a courtyard. Like that's an amazing moment of entry. Let's see, where am I here? Of entry to these wonderful courtyards, and you have enough distance to the neighbor, and you can imagine like the section there, right? The stepping of the life and so on. I think that's really interesting in the units. This piece, which is so valuable and so, it's like will be most of the most coveted space. I think, part of the system should be finding those meaningful connections from that to the units. Because whenever you do Ls are very difficult because it always has a space here. that it's tricky because it's like, oh, it doesn't have like light, you know, and so on, but it's adjacent to these, right, to these terrace. So that could be a way of giving value to the sort of the worst part of the L. And just sometimes detecting like, okay, I have a system down. Now I'm going to give a grade to every space, right? Like, okay, good living rooms, right? And you start grading and good, you know, bathrooms and good bed. Then you might find a way that, you know, you might find a subsystem that says, okay, within the system I'm creating, I'm looking at adjacencies and values, and then placing there the best room possible. Because, you know, then it could be that that system, and I don't know if you need, what are the rules with the 5-story? Do you need two exits, right? In the 5-story things, in the 5-story buildings, like 2 means of egress, or I don't know if that's even important, but you know, with this system, I wonder like, oh, could that like also be here and a terrace be here as well? So that these courtyards also have you know, since you were talking about the variety of the courtyards and the sizes, could that also be like the back entry? And I'm like now thinking of the project that we looked at before. I think it was Asher's, right? Like these units having like a front end entry and a back entry. So I wonder if, you know, if something that you start finding this system of these balconies to, you know, towards the patios always, then that piece becomes completely different, right? Because it's always between 2 balconies. And then it gives you choice of access and of renting and of growing and of dividing, right? Because right now the Ls are very rigid also in the sense that you can't really grow or share or detach. So I don't know, just thinking of, and this is just thinking of these courtyards, right? As places that are, rather than these sort of little, I'm not sure if that's a gap or a, but I don't know. I just think this is fascinating. And if it was replicated, it would give different meaning to different courtyards and also different ways of navigating through. And then you can enter here, you can enter there, you can connect, and you can even connect units. Like that could be like an amazing unit, right? That all of a sudden connects. So the systems always have to give you something back that it's like unexpected, but you know, but this is like really, really accomplished, and that's why it's easy to draw over it and say and imagine possibilities. Because it's worked out. But I think, yeah, the plans in a little, you know, they're a little bit, you know, these spaces are not like so great, and you know, these big spaces, but grading the interior, more attention to that in relation to the system as a whole could give you a way of positioning those bedrooms and kitchens and bathrooms in a generous way. You know, those kitchens then maybe can be there, you know, and so on. But yes, I think it's a very interesting project.
Just a brief comment in relation to the L shape. I was thinking that because it's the skin of the animal that is a partition. I mean, this is a partition wall, and this is not. It's clear that if this is A and this is B, but all these other line is clearly a facade, no? So the idea of perhaps the materiality is more in relation to the inside, out, from the inside to the outside, and then making this against the materiality that is coming from the outside to the inside and having a dialogue, right? So it looks like your materiality is coming from the massing, volume, recognition, and then perhaps you can have a thinking about materiality coming from the inside and have a dialogue there to decide the middle ground, I guess. Yeah.
And maybe I'm just insisting, but I think that the ability that you have, skills that you have, deserve more freedom. Deserves that you really question yourself and don't accept yourself to make this kind of decisions of control, no? Of okay, now I have it clear. These are the bars, these are the things in between, and look, that's not helping you. Don't over control that. Not let the project make all these questions and let the project take you somewhere, because you have the skills to conduct it. No, it's like you have a good horse. Let the horse go, and you can just like pump and move it. You don't just need to grab it and say, "Hey, here, don't move." Everything has to be very clear. No.
Yes.
Just really like make the hierarchy. The hierarchy is the core of your decisions. From the core of your decisions, you go and explore, as opposed to straitjacket all this and be comfortable and safe and secure because nothing is out of place. No.
Yes, definitely something I need to work on.
Unless you find a rigid system that is so worked out that it works like a clock, which is like the other side of the coin, right? But that is difficult, right? Is it a framework that it's super open, but that needs to be really calibrated, right? Whenever a system seems rigid, but it's actually upon close examination is very open, that's something really hard to achieve. So yes, it could be another direction, right?
Drawings
for that you need more complexity. You need to define more variables as something that you can start, because with the stair, with the entrance, with these shared terraces, no, that's a good. But that's a different animal than the pieces that you are attaching behind, and then maybe the unit is not the L, maybe the unit is the square pieces or the rectangular pieces, and then you can add more or less depending on, and you can touch or not touch depending on, as opposed to define a perimeter.
We have Rafael here. You want to say something, Rafael Benitez?
Well, I think thank you for the invitation. No, I really agree with all the comments. I was just hovering around and thinking how much this architecture is putting aside all these other things that produces, which is related to, as I think Monica was pointing, what happens in this bridge and what happens in the life that is in the patios, and how much you need a perspective from the bottom up, looking the patios, and I think that is a declaration of intentions of understanding the patio as a place where things in the social dimension of the collective housing will happen. I'm missing a little bit the narrative of the social, but other than that, I think the work is completely analyzed by the previous voices very precisely. And the L problem, right? The plan in L is always challenging at some point. Sometimes it's exactly in the corner where the staircase is where you break the L, producing an encounter of two pieces. And maybe this is a missed opportunity of the work, but I really enjoy the graphics and the level of commitment on the resolution of the whole. Maybe there is a second level of this appreciation of details and movements and what type of society this collective housing produces. That's my overall question. And how do we represent it? And it has to do with this experience of these spaces. It's like, how do you inhabit those ones? I think in this regard, the work of Lacaton and Basal has been always very exemplary, because they pay a lot of attention, not in the physicality of the architecture, but what type of everyday life produces. And I think there is an intention here when you're drawing the furniture. Sometimes you're repeating it too much, but it's a point of exploring this otherness that architecture produces. And I think it's critically important in collective housing, because it's exactly this space where you produce, the city, and then you produce the individual versus, a more alienated condition. And I think we are kind of surprised on the rigidity, because it alienates a little bit the conversation. And I think it's probably that the potential problem that is being targeted in this comment with the best intention of gaining all the values of this proposal. So,
thank you.
So, congratulations. So we have now some minutes to go to the final stretch of meeting all together in room 0. I posted in the chat room 0 and also the concept board in case you want to hang around there while we're in room 0 to check all the work of all the sections together. And we'll meet in room 0 and all the reviewers and all the students. Okay, I will wait here to make sure you have your link clear or you're not lost or something like that. Sarah, congratulations. It's amazing work.
Thank you again.
Great conversation. Monica, have you accessed the concept board? I cannot hear you. Okay, I read your lips, but I cannot listen to you. You have the mic muted. Okay. So